You found your way to Blood Moon Radio. I'm Coralie, and this is where we follow the threads the world wants us to drop. Today we're joined by Jowita Bydlowska, best-selling Polish-Canadian author, essayist, and sharp observer of the human heart. Her work unravels love, addiction, survival, and the dark corners we often turn away from, making her the perfect guest for our very first descent into the shadows. We are so glad you're here. This is Blood Moon Radio, and my guest today is the beautiful Jowita Bydlowska. How's it going today, Jowita?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be doing this.
Something that stood out to me on your forms that you filled out before we did this was the quote, "Heart is where the risk is." And I thought maybe we could begin there.
What did I mean by that? Because I'm trying to remember. Just so we know, I'm also like perimenopausal. So things happen and I'm like,
The brain.
Who was I that day? I probably didn't come up with this quote, but I kept writing it and I kept thinking it. And that has to do with this sort of idea of coming almost full circle where, bad or important or difficult things happen to us. And then we tend to isolate and protect ourselves from people, from situations, from experiences, personal, professional, artistic. And then we have to open up again. I think that's just a human condition. I mean, so people stay closed for the rest of their lives. And I'm sure we both know of people like this, but I love this idea that I found this openness within me and I didn't know what was happening. And I just felt like I really want to live to the fullest in an emotional sense. And I know it's going to sound cheesy, but I'm like, I'm just going to enjoy every moment. And then that translates to other things. That translates to friendships, possibly starting new romantic relationships and just taking risks and really going for it and not being ashamed of feeling deeply and feeling hard. And yeah, that's where I'm at. Because I think I was really jaded and like serious before, but I'm not that anymore. So yeah.
Do you think that's a life experience thing? Because I actually think when I got into my 40s, I was like, you know what? I have a lot more of that. I used to be very anxious about doing things properly and worrying about everything. And I hit about the time I decided to leave my marriage. I was like, you know what? Nope, I'm experiencing it. I'm not worrying as much anymore.
Yeah. And I've noticed that. I've noticed that in your posts. Like I can tell that you're doing it authentically because I know some of it is because of this enterprise that you're pursuing right now. Some of it has to be obviously for the public, but it does seem to be authentic for you. I don't feel that you're like trying to convince us that you're doing this thing. Because I think in your 40s, hopefully sooner for some people or later for others, but I think you arrive at this point where like we both care a lot less about like really stupid shit and care a lot more about things that we care about. Like it doesn't matter. I think you have to care less about other things like people's opinions and being proper and being like certain way, being a woman and all those things mean like pleasing men and just pleasing society.
You mentioned perimenopause, which there's a lot of discussion going on around. And I don't remember when my mom was in this phase of life, people even talking about it. Is that influencing your work right now, as well as your life, as well as your brain capacity?
Yeah. That's interesting that you say that about your mom, because I was trying to think of my mom and I'm like, when did she go through this? And I don't remember. And it's funny. Maybe that was one of those things that we hide because we hide everything. We had periods or the beginning of our pregnancies, everything's hidden. And then perimenopause or menopause is another thing that we hide. So I'm very glad that there's a lot of dialogue around it now. I'm assuming it's a lot more than it used to be because it's in all kinds of realms like literature and film, etc. I wrote two things, as you know, that sort of deal with the subject of it or that particular time in life of a woman, because I'm always interested in a female protagonist that is going through changes. And I found that in literature, especially things that were people loved and read, all these women were like somewhere around 30, like under 30 and a little bit over, like cool things happened to them, cool men, like cool experiences. And then we're grandmothers, like 50 years later, right? And I'm like, okay, but what happens between like 45 to 65 or 70? I couldn't think of any heroes like that. And like with my other books, I just said, oh, I want to write about these people that are maybe I don't read about so much drunk moms, etc. But I thought that's another female character that I think it's underexplored and it should be explored. So it does appear a lot in what I'm doing now. And I told you my whole thing also stemmed from personal experience and having to specifically deal with medical establishment and not being able to get help or advice that I needed because there's simply no research. There are no medical professionals trained in women with perimenopause and menopause. Any doctor will tell you this, so it's like, oh, here's another way in which we were forgotten.
I think I remember reading that they didn't even begin studying the effects of medicines or studying female anatomy properly and going off of that for medical procedures till the 90s or something. It blew my mind.
I mean, this is why women have different experiences when it comes to medication because all the subjects were male. So we have a lot more side effects when it comes to medication because the body weight was measured differently. Our hormones affect us. Everything at sex is, right? So we set up for failure from the beginning. When this blew my mind, I may be wrong, but the clitoris was not mapped out on MRI until 2019. 29. This. It's like there's something like 9 medical textbooks now in the world that have a correct female anatomy.
That is an astoundingly small number.
And here's an interesting part. And I'll stop being a false Wikipedia, but our nerve endings in our clitoris system have twice the amount of penile endings. So there's something 10,000 nerve endings. They have about 4,000 something. So I'm like, we're way more interesting creatures, even to study. And female pleasure is way more complicated and interesting and magical than male pleasure. It is. And it starts here too, right? In our brains.
You aren't really a stranger to tackling topics like sex or forbidden kind of taboo for women to talk about topics like struggling with things in motherhood. You brought up drunk mom. Obviously, you're well known for that, but you tackle topics like sex, addiction. What's that like? Is it well accepted in publishing to be writing about things that aren't, necessarily?
That's a good question. I don't want to be like, oh, this is my big method, but certainly this is something I always thought about since writing Drunk Mom, which was to write about things that I don't want to write about, that scare me, that I think would bring in embarrassment and potential consequences. And when I write them and I talk about them, I'm absolutely terrified. But that to me is also something that tells me that it needs to be written about, because if I'm scared and I think I'm open-minded and tolerant person, then probably other people are thinking about it and are even more afraid. It's one of those obligations that I think artists and writers and creators and producers, we have to be the mouthpiece for people that may not be able to talk about things, right?
Because I was reading Monster. There's a section where Jowita, the main character, which we can get to in a second, was talking about maybe I've imagined this whole thing. Like she's let her husband convince her that he doesn't cheat. And he's gone so far as to tell her she needs mental help. And she's bought that. And then when she finally realizes that there is an actual person, right? There's a section in the book where she just thinks, if I try harder, if I do better, we're going to be this perfect family. And that really stuck with me because I'm very type A and I spent a big portion of my life thinking, oh, if I can just do it better, these things will go away. And it's a dynamic that I see a lot.
Prior to our recording, we were talking about what my mom said about marriage, that back in her day, women put up with infidelity and that's just something you did if you wanted to have a nice marriage. And there was another thing that my mom said, this idea that a kid should grow up without both parents present in a home was just the worst thing that could have happened. Like that was worse than having these parents hate each other and fight. And that to me is mind-blowing, right? Yeah. So thank God we don't have to subscribe to that anymore. But just writing about things that are difficult to write, there's freedom in that, right? Because you do write it and then people are like, oh my God, I feel the same way or I had the same thought. And then you ask me about publishing. I feel that international, especially European and United States, are a lot more open when it comes to things. Canada has very specific things that they like to cover, and we do have a tendency not to want to rock the boat. We do have great political writings, but my books, the novels especially, are in like crazy bestsellers. And every time I'm on some panel or something, I always hear the word pornography or erotica. And I'm like, no, this is just part of life. I'm writing about sex the way other people write about food or raising kids. I mean, We all do it. Most of us. I don't know. That's,
That's
no.
interesting, right? Because it is a human activity.
Yeah,
But traditionally, it has been very taboo for women to
absolutely.
be
Yeah.
open about it, right? That's
Yeah.
not something you're supposed to do.
Yeah. Oh, and I still think that I'm like, I don't want to be vulgar, but I'm like, where did that word come from? Where is that in like
Hmm.
who told me that that's vulgar? You know, it's this constant like secrecy and shaming. My next book that's coming out next year is all about shame and all about talking about things that keep us hiding and ashamed. My big thing is the way you get rid of shame, any sort of shame, sexual, any other one, is to talk about it, to share it with people. And the more you do, the smaller it gets.
Yeah, I do think shame and silence also play a role in abuse dynamics, right? Because if someone can convince you that you should be ashamed or that there's shame in something that you've done, they can convince you to hide it and they can use it to manipulate you. And so I think that's a fascinating topic. I'm excited for your book. Is that going to be nonfiction?
Yeah, that's nonfiction. So it's supposed to be strictly nonfiction, more academic. And I just found that it was such a huge topic that there's no way I'm going to be able to interview all the experts and talk about sex and talk about addiction and talk about all the other shames. So I had to turn the lens inwards again. And it's a bit of a follow up to Drunk Mom. I had to be like, if I'm going to write about shame, I have to tell everybody what my biggest shame is currently at that time, which I did. And I'm going through proofs right now. I reread the first page and I'm like, I am absolutely bonkers to be publishing this. So I don't know. Ugh, we'll see. Could
Yeah.
you show the cover of Monster?
I actually meant to talk about the cover because I
Thank
love
you.
this cover.
I love this cover so much.
University students out there, someone needs to write an essay analyzing the cover and how it relates to the content. I will admit it's a little hard for me to, because I know you, separate Jowita in the book from Jowita. I read in the back because I was like, this is messing with my head. And I could see, yeah, how you wanted that because of the way people react to fiction writing. So can you tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, that I was a sort of tongue in because I had this conversation with another female author, and we talked about how when women authors are interviewed, usually by male interviewers, they always ask if this is based on a real story because there's this belief that women either cannot come up with fictional story, it has to be, and it's true, all fiction is rooted in reality, right? But this idea that women are less capable of writing about something that has nothing to do with them, I think it's a pretty strong idea within how we see women's writing. I may be guilty of that too. So I named her Jowita because I thought people are gonna assume that it's about me, so I may as well just give her my name. And then also, I don't know, it was interesting too with Possessed, before Possessed was published, on the day of its publication, I got a letter from a lawyer sent on behalf of my former lover who believed himself to be the inspiration for the male, the younger lover in Possessed. And I just this idea that I think I mentioned to him, I sort of based this character on you. And this guy went and paid $800 or to $1,000 to get a lawyer to send me a letter asking to cease and desist because he's never read the manuscript. And women's writing gets attacked in just bizarre ways and in ways that are very patriarchal. People are trying to control us. Men are trying to still control the narrative. With Monster, I did submit it to a different publisher, and the potential acquiring editor read a few pages, and he also threatened a lawsuit. So there you go. It's happening. And it's funny, but I think men are scared of women writing in general. They are scared of us writing. They think it's about them.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is. I don't know. And I thought, should I just name all my characters Jowita for the rest of my life? Just to
It's fun, but also I have to like step. I'm like, Jowita.
yeah, I
I
get
only
it.
know one. I only know one Jowita. And she wrote this book with the Jowita in it.
Oh yeah, and she's a writer, she's an immigrant, like her husband is older, my ex was older. There's a lot of overlaps. It is intentional. I call it autofiction, but it's like autofiction with a wink.
Yeah.
As much as Guy is autofiction, and Guy is written from a point of view of a male. So it's like,
Right.
but even with that book, I wrote it from a point of view of a 28-year-old cad. People just assumed that it was about my ex at that time, that I wrote it as him. And I'm like, fuck's sake. Like,
If women create life, we're creators. How is it that people could think that a female writer can't create?
I've been told so many times that men are competitive, other male writers are competitive with, and I always wanted to say, no, they're not. It's like everyone's supportive. At least that's been my experience. But I've had a few incidents where I'm like, they genuinely are. And I think the competitiveness can be very cool and healthy, but a lot of times it comes from fear and from feeling threatened. And I'm like, that's gross. I don't know.
You mentioned earlier sometimes you're scared to write about these things or to say them. What's something you've done recently that scared you?
I think just, I don't know, just in general, confronting things, I think it's scary. I told you about a personal experience I'm going through right
Yeah.
now, where I have to make an ethical decision about a new person in my life. And in the past, I think that would have been something I would have shut down. Like, I'm just going to walk away from everything. I don't feel I can do that, but it's giving me all kinds of anxiety and insomnia. And it's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to confront anybody. I don't want to be involved in this thing, but now I'm doing it. And it's hard. Like, it's hard once you stop stripping bullshit from your life. It's hard to really tolerate it. So that scares me, confronting situations that I would rather just close my eyes and be like, no, that's not happening.
I
Yeah.
think it's so difficult as humans. I think about this a lot. We're complicated, and you're aware of this. You're a writer. Once you spend your life examining the complexities of being human through writing, and you can't take away all the drama or all the conflict.
Yeah.
I think the only thing you can do is be true to yourself. Like, what resonates for me? How do I want to behave in this scenario? Because it's also true that you have no idea. You can think you know someone. You have no control over what other people do. You have no idea, right?
But I was just thinking, and you really lean into this. I think also with age, you really become aware of your intuition and that first voice, the gut feeling, all those things that are unexplainable. And I love that we get to put our energy into that. I think that's very important. And, the old me would be like, no, the only proof is scientific and real. I have to see it in front of me. But actually, we know a lot. We just sometimes don't want to admit that we know these things, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. What are we willing to admit? That's a big one. When you're ready to face it. When I was writing the blog post announcement for you, something that came up was writing as exorcism. And I can't remember whether you brought that up or where that came from, but writing as exorcism, because you've handled tough topics, you've covered things that are very personal for you and also very unacceptable to society, particularly in terms of what motherhood is. Mothers are really expected to be perfect. That's lorded over us. You're not allowed to be human. What does writing as exorcism mean?
What does it mean? Well, I think it's different from, because especially when you write memoir, and you may remember this, people will tell you that this is a form of therapy for you and it's cathartic and
Right.
it's like, did you write this to heal yourself, etc. Right? And that's not always the case. I think that some writing can be self-harming as well. The exorcism is more about having an issue. Let's say the issue is addiction, having this issue and like sitting in you. The moment you put it out into the world as a piece of writing, similarly to shame, it just becomes smaller, it becomes something else, it becomes almost tangible. So you're evicted from your psyche or from your body. It doesn't mean that you're healed from it. It just means that you give it away a little bit. I would never say that writing is cathartic in that way, because I think catharsis is almost like equal with healing. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wish it worked that way. But I can't tell you how many people are like, "Oh, you wrote Drunk Mom. Is it a form of therapy?" I'm like, "Fuck no!" Like,
I
it's
needed
opposite.
therapy after it was released, and people started writing to me about my life that they know nothing but this little snippet about.
I mean, it's been absolutely the most astounding gift. Yesterday, I went into my Facebook spam folder. I didn't know I had one with messages,
Yep.
and there's messages from people from 2019, because I didn't know I had one, writing about Drunk Mom, and mostly women, mostly talking about their own addiction and not wanting anything. A couple wanted to things, but I was like, this thing is bigger than me, but it has nothing to do necessarily with how I write or what I wrote. It's just allowing people to see themselves or see something that they can relate to. I didn't expect that at all. I thought, oh, I'm going to write this, people are going to get probably upset, and they did very much so, but there's a lasting effect. And again, that goes back to what you're doing, producing podcasts and making things. As you said, you don't know how people are going to react. Like, oh, this is going to be small. This is going to be mine. I'm expressing myself. But then suddenly you find out that it has a completely unexpected result and mostly positive. So I don't know. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
I love that idea of, and we've talked about this before,
Mhm.
you create something and then once it's out in the world, it expands as people interact with it. Just the energy of the universe creation. And I think that humans don't always think about how we're a part of that. We create something and as it's out there, it grows, it expands, right?
Mm.
I love
Yeah.
your earrings, by the way.
Thank you. So this is a women's organization for Indigenous women who are incarcerated. It's called Women Helping Women Beat Work. And I'm wearing them because I just found out that their account got shut down because someone made a complaint about them. So they lost 30,000 followers. So I'm like, I need to give them anyway. And they're beautiful
Yeah,
earrings. So
they are beautiful.
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I did pull you a tarot card and
Oh, yes.
you got
Okay.
the Queen of Swords.
What is that? Am I okay?
Yep, that's a card about strength and intelligence. Swords are a suit that's ruled by thought. So
Mm.
you can relate it different ways, but how I usually think about it is whatever the card is saying, it can be encouraging you to either make your thoughts center around that, like focus on your strength and intelligence, right? You have the means within you to navigate, say, what we were talking about earlier, what you're going through that scares you right now. And conversely, if it had been a card that
Yeah.
talks about less comfortable things, it can be that your thoughts are taking you there and you have the ability to come out. But Queen
I
of
love
Swords
that.
energy is like very, yeah, I would say that's Jowita.
I love that. It's badass. What's the picture? It was quite beautiful.
Oh, it's got a white wolf.
Oh, like my earrings.
Yeah, like your
There you
earrings.
go.
What a
All aligned.
coincidence.
That's amazing.
My timer is telling me that we don't have too much time.
Okay, sorry. Yes.
But we've talked a lot about risk, whether that's the risk of talking about things and how people are going to react, or the risk of being vulnerable and sharing parts of your life. What's a risk that your heart is still asking you to take that you haven't?
I think embarking on new relationships, especially romantic at certain age, is like, yeah, I still want to do it. And then there's a huge part of me that's like, just hang out with your chihuahua. You're good. You're happy. Nobody needs this. I don't know. So, I mean, it's funny because I'm at weird crossroads lately, but it's interesting to me too, because it's the same excitement that we have at 17. It's possible
Yeah.
at 48. That's one. Other ones I don't have because in terms of where I am and what I'm around, like I'm a little bit stuck in Toronto until my kid turns 18 and graduates, and then I can figure out the rest.
Toronto's not too bad of a city to be. I'm not
I
a city
know, but
girl,
it's
but I like to visit the city.
yes, visiting is
I
great.
enjoy visiting Toronto.
Yes.
And cities have their own beauty. Like even though I'm very outdoorsy, architecture and the history in cities is fascinating, right? And the culture. You can
Yeah.
get so much culture there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I went on like Ossington, downtown Toronto. We went in Ossington yesterday and it was a parade and it was hot and it rained and there were like tons of people. And I was like, oh, this is exhausting and amazing at the same time.
Is there
Mm.
anything else before we close out that you were hoping to talk about?
Oh my God, there's so much. And I feel like we're just going to continue talking. I don't know. I'm going to ask you a question back. As creator of this podcast, and what sort of stories, what interests you the most right now? Like, where does your heart lie? What's inspiring to you as a
Ooh,
creator?
I think the whole concept of Blood Moon Radio covers my mind is kind of like a spider web when I start to think, and it shoots off into all these different directions, but I can see how they're all connected. And connection is a huge thing for me between people, between experiences and stories. And I'm loving the overlay because I've always been drawn to spooky things, ghost stories, mystic lore, religion. Overlaying that with the very feminist slant of this is amazing for me. There's a long, rich history there. Witchcraft is obviously delves into that, right?
It's funny, like you say, which this is, I think, first time that I really leaned into my Slavic background with witch covens, and I covered a little bit with the book that you're reading because I've never paid attention. And there's so much wisdom because I think we grew up thinking, oh, it's for kids or it's fake, but there's a reason for why we had witch covens and why women gathered together. They're very powerful things, and not everything can be explained. Like I'm so dumb. I actually didn't really occur to me until writing this new book that, that we're affected by the moon. Blood Moon Radio. I'm like, oh yes.
We are affected by the moon. The ocean is affected by the moon, right? So it shouldn't be surprising, but we do. We kind of put it on the shelf in that it's too woo, especially if you're academic.
Yeah. Horoscopes, tarot, everything. And now I'm really drawn to it more and more. And I would be the first person to make fun of it like 10 years ago. And now I'm like, this is awesome.
I know you're the Polish witch. Witchy Polish lady.
Thank you so much for the tarot. That was awesome and unexpected, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And thank you for this. This was cool.
Thank you for coming on. What a great first experience for a special guest. You can find a small selection of Jowita's titles in the reading room at bloodmoonradio.com. You can also check her out on her Instagram at JowitaBot or on her website, jowitabydlowska.com. Be sure to keep your eye out for her upcoming memoir, On Shame, releasing in April of 2026. And until next time, remember, the truth echoes louder after dark. Whispered, unfiltered, waiting to be touched. See you soon.